Hi everybody, welcome back to NYSE Wired and theCUBE's Media Week. This is our wall-to-wall coverage. Day 3, Dave Vellante here. John Furrier is also in the house. You know, the problem of deep fakes, lack of trust in content manipulation, it's a serious problem that is increasingly pervasive in our society. Wasim Khaled is the CEO and a founder of Blackbird AI, who deals with this problem. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, nice setup here. You guys, you're just on with Trinity, so appreciate you guys making some time for us.
Absolutely.
Let me start with the company. You started the company in 2017, correct?
That's right.
Why? Why did you start the company?
Well, I mean, my co-founder and I both thought that this was going to be an existential problem, really the problem of our time. It's not just really about disinformation, misinformation, but about manipulation of people's perception. We think of it today as a cyber attack on human perception and narrative manipulation, and it kind of touches every walk of life, enterprise, national security, and we'll talk about that a little bit today, but I think today now more than ever, I think that's relatable to everybody.
I mean, was it just a coincidence? It was a year after the 2016 election. I mean, certainly that was an escalation. I mean, so in 2012 we saw social media play a big role in sort of a positive way. By 2016, it was all kinds of, people were talking about weaponization of social, the narrative changed, obviously 2020 escalated, and now it's like, oh my gosh, so it was prescient. Did that have anything to do with, was that a catalyst at all, or was it just a convenient coincidence?
It's kind of a coincidence. I mean, we have been thinking about this problem since 2014 really, and it was more about just how is it that certain people are so easily convinced about things that are happening that they see on the internet, otherwise very well-educated people. So it started as really almost like a technology experiment. Being computer scientists and AI researchers from way back, we wanted to see if we could quantify this problem of how people's perception could be shifted using information in our kind of open communication systems that we saw as being hijacked by, at the time, what was kind of a question mark, and we found a lot out since then.
So what is a narrative attack, and how is it different from fake news or alternative facts or whatever other rubric you want to use?
Sure. So a narrative attack is actually some language we developed to define this thing, because this is not really about fake news. It's not about what is true, what is not. It's not about removing content. It is about, again, that manipulation of the narrative. A narrative attack is any kind of assertion in the information ecosystem that can manipulate and shape perception about a person, a place, a thing, a product, what have you. And it's really about tradecraft by state actors, by opportunistic threat actors that are trying to create some sort of financial outcome, societal outcome, reputational outcome for some sort of gain or ideology. And so it is this notion of the tradecraft that we set out to detect, because no one wants to be manipulated, or they at least want to understand what is happening. Right, and that was the approach there.
So I remember, I think it was last year, if I recall, there was an incident. I can't remember exactly what it was. It was some kind of bomb went off or something at the Pentagon, or something like that. The markets dropped momentarily. They came right back, so somebody obviously made some money off of that, I presume. Right. It's still happening. So that's what you're out to protect against, is that right? Or?
Yeah, I remember that incident. So it was like a doctored or deepfake type of imagery.
Yes,
that's right. One example, right? I mean, one thing is you have to understand combination of synthetic media and the individuals that are out there trying to create that kind of a context to confuse people, disorient people, have them look over here while they're trying to create a different outcome in this area of the ecosystem. And if we really think about the kinds of impact, you mentioned like financial markets, right? If you look at like the global risk report from the World Economic Forum, which just came out this morning, they put misinformation and disinformation right at #1 for the next 2 years again. If you think about it, in this world, that's #1, and then among that group of items, there's things like state conflict, cyber insecurity, extreme weather, and it still comes in first. Now, they call it misinformation, disinformation. We think of it again as this kind of narrative manipulation, but it's telling that this is seen as one of the biggest global threats of our time. And then if you look at something like the Forrester Threat Intelligence Report, they're looking at cybersecurity and the ability to protect against narrative attacks. And we were really happy to see that Blackbird was featured as really the only company that actually has some sort of technology that can defend against these kinds of narrative attacks, amongst other companies like CrowdStrike, Google, and Microsoft listed that don't have these capabilities yet. And I guess the last thing to add is like Gartner, they say there's going to be approximately $30 billion spent by enterprise organizations by 2028 fighting these kinds of problems. So it's critical that leaders and executive teams, organizations around the world have defenses against this kind of attack.
So is that your TAM? I mean, roughly, is that like a $30 billion TAM, or is it? I mean, it would seem to me they're going to spend that money with crisis management, with a lot of people, and if you can automate that and streamline that, you can get a piece of that pie.
A big piece of it. I see the TAM is even larger than that because there's this national security component, there's a cybersecurity component, and a lot of CISOs, like Chief Information Security Officers, threat intelligence teams, in addition to the comms teams, have been coming to us to understand how and why are these incidents occurring and how do we actually see it? How do we observe what's happening so we can get decision dominance around this problem before we get hit?
Is the why predominant? What are the patterns? Is the why predominantly financial gain? Is it to try to take out a competitor or wreak havoc in a society? What's the motivation here?
I mean, all of the above, right? It really depends on the flavor of the actor that is trying to drive that outcome. But we've seen things like during an M&A, someone might get in there and try to change perception around that M&A so they can be short selling on the other side by creating a slowdown. Fake memos, controversies, fabricated controversies. I mean, I would just think about today with generative AI and synthetic media getting as realistic as it is. On the day of a big launch, you could suddenly have a deep-faked group of insiders that work at the company just flooding the internet with some sort of a discussion around how this product doesn't work or that the whole thing is a fraud. And then you have everyone from the CEO to the shareholders to the board to the markets wondering, is this something that is actually true?
Right.
These things are gonna happen.
This product causes cancer. What? Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
It's okay. So let's get into how you combat that.
Sure.
And the tech behind it.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've been building this tech for about 8 years. It is an AI platform, and we have broken this kind of what seems like an amorphous, mutating problem into something very quantitative, right? And that is 3 things I tell every executive team they have to understand that our technology can provide. 1, what is this kind of mutating narrative, and where does it actually live? How big is that narrative getting? But importantly, at the same time, how is it spreading like a contagion within the information ecosystem? Which areas of it are they infecting with this narrative? And then the third most important thing is there synthetic amplification? So are there bot networks or inauthentic coordinated activity propping up that narrative? Because that shows intention. This is not conversation. These are not people just talking about this thing. There is someone behind it driving a tradecraft that is trying to get some sort of an outcome. Now, if you can't observe those kinds of things happening around your organization, you are going to get hit at some point. It could be something as simple as a statement on your HR policy on your website. It could be something the CEO says. If we think about United Healthcare and executive protection, don't you want to know if the public is being riled up, especially in a fabricated way, against your organization or industry? These are just things that people have to look at. And again, it's why I think leaders are really waking up to the fact that if you don't know this, you can't do anything. You could spend $500 million on a marketing campaign, it could be derailed overnight with a narrative attack.
So is your platform like an observation platform? Is it math? My other question is, are you a cyber play in a way? But let's start with again, I'm really intrigued. You've obviously got an observation space that you're infusing into your platform, and is there math behind it, or are you just sort of looking at, is something you can understand patterns, whether or not something is organically viral, or explain that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, the technologies we've built, which is like majority of it is artificial intelligence and big network analysis, it enables you to see all of these risk signals that were never before seen. So traditional monitoring platforms and intelligence platforms really only count keywords and look at sentiment. That's kind of like the bottom of the signal stack today. You have to be able to understand that spread and all of the different actor types and all of the different risk signals that indicate a narrative attack, velocity, impact. People talk about understanding if something's a deep fake. Well, how far did that deep fake travel? How many of the people did it touch, and how many did it change their perception around that particular campaign? So you could think of it as a performance measurement on this campaign on the other side, right? So a traditional marketer might think of it like that. But the person who's running it, that nation could have spent billions of dollars building this tradecraft. It could be a nation state, cyber criminal. So you're right, it is a cybersecurity play today more than ever. I mean, some of our investors include, Dave Vellante from Night Dragon.
Oh, we know Dave.
Yep. So,
Yeah,
I think a lot of the cyber players today and chief information security officers are coming to us to fill what they're starting to see as an intelligence gap, like any other new risk that comes up. And I always think of it as this. You have this kind of battle space in the information ecosystem, and defense always trails offense. And the offense on this particular problem has gotten massive and is being funded by a lot of kind of dark money, cyber criminal actors, nation states. So you're gonna want powerful technologies on the other side to defend against it. And just like cybersecurity and cyber intelligence, you need to keep ahead of it. And that's the only space we're focused in, and that's what we do for our customers.
What if tomorrow, this is off the wall, what if tomorrow every piece of content was watermarked or NFT'd? What would that mean to your business?
This is something we've talked about. We've even, early days, we ourselves looked into crowdsourced blockchain solutions, but
right.
So let's say images, right? Images could be watermarked, people can screenshot around them, they can still spread the narrative. The end user doesn't have the tool that's going to enable them to see if something is authentic or not, right?
So fake watermarked content.
Fake watermarks
right.
are just cropping it out. I would think of it like this. The people who really need to understand these things don't really have those technologies, and everyone would have to adopt it. I think the way to think about it is there are black market versions of every single AI model available today, right? So whether all of the big companies that are commercially providing these technologies, people will just go to the dark web like they always have and find the ungated versions that don't use those technologies anyway. The problem's out there, it's not going away.
So the probability of that happening is very, very low, to your point. Like almost impossible.
Almost impossible. Everyone would need to adopt it, right? So, yeah.
But it's interesting that it's something that you've thought about, because it ostensibly would be a risk to this tremendous value proposition you have.
Right.
But it feels like you got a runway before that happens.
I mean, let's just say that I think we've seen in the past 10 years to get like everyone cooperating and kind of adopting the same thing. One, from a monetary perspective, is not going to happen because everyone builds these fragmented things. Take online payment systems, right? Everyone wanted to do one system, but then everyone realized, hey, we want our own system to do it, and now you have 50 of them, right? Which is how we see the information ecosystem going. It's going to be more fragmented and more confusing for the average person to understand
History
what
would
real
suggest
is.
you're right about that. I was sort of alluded to before. You're sort of a cyber play because you're really reducing risk is your primary value proposition, I think.
For the cyber communities, yes. Like it's about understanding and measuring these risks so that you can mitigate and reduce them. On the comms side, crisis comms, things of that nature, it's also about like opportunity mining, because looking at the intelligence space in general today, if you can subtract out all of the manipulation, you can see what's actually happening and where you need to focus. If you can't cut that out, then when you're trying to look for opportunities, you're also being sent in the wrong direction. What your system sees as an opportunity could be what someone on the other side wants you to see. Right?
Okay,
so I think a relevant conversation, because the market is about perception, and one has to understand where that manipulation is.
That's still a risk avoidance use case, is it not? Or am I not understanding? Are you aspirin or are you vitamins?
I would say the majority of what we do is problem solving, risk reduction, risk detection.
Because that's the business case, right?
That is the business case.
If I'm a CEO, I'm worried about my reputation. I'm worried about somebody manipulating my stock or my brand, and there's a probability of that happening, which if I'm a big target is pretty high. Even if I'm not a huge target, it could be. And so you're going to reduce that risk by some amount.
Correct.
And presumably you can quantify that.
The way to think about it is, yes, we can quantify the risk. And when we get in there, what they see is, hey, this thing is so high resolution that we can use it for other things as well.
Right. And you're,
like opportunity
and you're a software company.
Yeah, it's a AI SaaS
Right.
platform, cloud-based, so we can just drop in and operate very quickly.
Right, and so, Palo Alto and CrowdStrike and CyberArk, they're all software companies too, but the reason why they trade at a somewhat higher valuation than some software companies is because it's their cybersecurity. So do we think of you in that same context?
Yeah. I mean, you can see that even just looking at our investment portfolio. The people who are backing us right now, who are pretty, kind of forward-looking, are seeing this as a cybersecurity play. We've thought of it as a cybersecurity play. I've thought of it as a cybersecurity play since 2018. The market now is starting to see that as well. That wasn't always the case.
Do you sell it to CISOs or?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Is that your primary?
A lot of our pipeline and inbound today are CISOs, and I think in the next, year, 2 years, that's going to be the majority of where we're really selling.
Interesting, because is it because they're expanding their sphere of responsibility to risk, broadly,
sure.
or I mean,
sure.
they've always been in the risk business, but they've been in like the technical risk business, right?
Yeah, I think what ends up happening with CISOs is that you have these risk profiles that end up falling on them, like digital fraud management, identity management, KYC. Those weren't the purview of the CISO at one point, and then they had to just start doing it. Right? The way I think about this and the way they're starting to think about it is, in a world where these are cyber criminals who are running the campaigns in the first place, right? There are nation states running these campaigns, and they're hitting the organizations they're entrusted to protect. It certainly doesn't go to the PR person or the marketing person to solve those problems. It goes to the CISO and the threat intelligence directors. And so that is just naturally becoming where the market's going, as opposed to 2-3 years ago, where it was more the chief communications officer in crisis.
So what's, if I'm a CISO or a CEO or risk manager, what's the best way for me to protect myself against these threats?
I mean, you have to fight fire with fire. You have to have a defensive technology platform to really let you understand how the other adversary is working. And today, they can work unobserved. So I think about this as observability, almost night vision into what's happening in the information space, so that again, you can have decision dominance at the highest level, at the board level, at the CEO level. How do you communicate these things to your customers? It's almost table stakes. In a couple of years, if you don't have this, it's going to be almost like not having intrusion detection within your network infrastructure today. It's going to be like unheard of. But today, it's like it's new. And you see only like really the sharpest CISOs and threat intelligence teams starting to bring us in.
Are your competitors kind of do it yourself, cobbling together, like you mentioned earlier in the Forrester report, it was CrowdStrike. I mean, CrowdStrike doesn't really do this. They do some posture management and things like that, which you're very good at, but they don't do this specifically.
They don't do this using technology. I think traditionally, this has been the purview of OSINT, so open source intelligence analysts, that are doing work with a basket of tools and basically doing like PDF as a service, and then someone has to read that and it's like a snapshot. And then you're kind of not really seeing what's happening the next moment and the next moment, right? What we're really providing often to those teams is how do we make one person able to do the work of 100 of those analysts? Because again, we're a generative AI company. We're building our first AI agent model to do this. So how do you accelerate them and be able to do it always on 24/7 at this very high resolution that they never would have seen before? So these could be our partners. The really large cyber firms, we could easily deploy their teams of technology to do this.
Do you have any direct competitors that do what you do? Are they out there?
There's startups out there that are doing, I guess their marketing is similar, right? They don't actually have a scalable technology platform that has the depth that we have. At least that's what our customers tell us.
But they want a piece of that more than $30 billion TAM. So I mean, hey, look, if you're
that's the market, right? So that's
if you're funded by, what you are. Well, who are your backers?
So Night Dragon is one. We have 1011 Ventures, which is a pure play cybersecurity investor. Doralton Capital.
Right, so those guys, they're players. People watch what they do and say, oh, there must be a big market there. So, and you've raised, is it correct, 32 million? Is that right, or is that an outdated number?
We'll make an announcement probably in the next week or two. It's but yeah, we've raised.
Oh, that's what Google said.
We've raised so far we've raised 32. Yeah.
Okay. All right, great. And you're in the process of looking for more capital, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Always, right?
IPO in your future someday?
I mean, I saw our logo on here a little while ago.
That's
It looked
cool,
pretty
right?
good.
Well,
so,
we'd love to have you back
yeah.
when that happens. So.
Absolutely.
Wasim, thanks so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
All right, keep it right there. Dave Vellante and John Furrier, NYSE Wired, and theCUBE's Media Week. Coverage continues right after this short break.